told him I'd be back, man. I'm high, I'm high. I'm high, I'm high.
Hello everybody, my name is Zach Law, and today we're going to be doing an anatomical analysis over a free kick in soccer. We'll be doing this by using multiple views. One will be the posterior view. We will also be using an anterior view, as well as front side lateral views and back side lateral views. We will conduct an anatomical analysis by breaking the kick down into three basic phases. The first phase is the preparation phase. The phase begins with the body in anatomical position with the muscles in neutral. Next, you transition into a run at the ball by first taking a small step or two backwards to load the primary movers and use your feet to push off. Next, you continue to take steps towards the ball to build momentum for the kick. The last stride taken before contact will be the plant. The plant foot will depend on what foot you are taking the kick with. In this case, Ruben is taking the kick with his right foot, so his left foot will be his plant foot. For this next part, we will switch over to a backside lateral view close-up to get a better look. As you can see, Ruben plants his foot dead even with the ball, but just a couple of inches of space between his foot and the ball to allow him to swing his right leg in clearly to make proper contact with the ball. The right leg will swing back with flexion at the knee and extension at the hip to load power. You will also notice that while the kicking is done with the feet, the upper body is involved in the kick as well. For this analysis, we had Ruben focus more on finesse with this shot than power, so his upper body is not as involved as it would be if he were shooting for power. The rotation of the upper body and the swinging of his left arm would help to build torque into his kick, giving the kick extra power. But in this case, Ruben is more focused on hitting the ball squarely and accurately, so you will not see as much upper body movement as you would with a more powerful shot. To accommodate time, we will focus solely on the muscles and actions of the lower body in this analysis and at the final moment of each phase. At the completion of this phase, as shown in the picture, the right hip will be in extension while the left hip is in a slight flexion. The muscles that contribute to the right hip extension are the gluteus maximus, biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. The muscles that contribute to the left hip flexion are the psoas, iliopsoas, rectus femoris, and pectineus muscles. At this point, both knees will be in flexion, although the left knee is only slightly flexed. Muscles that contribute to the flexion of the knee are the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. At this moment, both ankles will be plantar flexed, although the left ankle is dorsiflexed until it plants into the ground, but at the final moment of this phase, it is plantar flexed. The gastrocnemius and soleus are the muscles that work to plantar flex the ankles. The next phase is the contact or execution phase. This is the phase where the ball is struck. In this phase, the right knee will transition from flexion to extension to strike the ball. The rectus femoris, vastus medialis, lateralis, and intermedius are the muscles that will create this action. Conversely, the right hip will transition from extension to flexion to help strike the ball. The right hip will also slightly adduct to strike the ball at the proper angle and externally rotate so that Ruben can hit the ball with the inside of his foot. The psoa, iliopsoa, rectus femoris, and pectineus will aid in hip flexion, while the gracilis, adductor longus, brevis, and magnus cause the adduction, and the gluteus maximus and 6 deep external rotators cause the external rotation. The right ankle will remain in plantar flexion from the contraction of the gastrocnemius and soleus. Forward rotation of the pelvic area will also occur in the motion to strike the ball. The rectus abdominis and external and internal oblique muscles create this action. As for the left leg, the knee will transition from its slight flexion to extension to straighten out and provide a solid base. The rectus femoris, vastus medialis, lateralis, and intermedius are the muscles that will create this action. The left hip will transition from flexion to extension to also help straighten out the leg and provide a good base. The gluteus maximus, biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus are the muscles that cause this action. Lastly, the left ankle will also remain plantar flexed using the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles to do so. The final phase is the follow-through phase. In this phase, the kicking leg will continue to drive through the ball until the leg reaches its peak and begins to descend back to the ground. Sometimes, when enough force is applied, the left leg will be lifted off the ground from the upward force of the kicking leg and will come back down and absorb the landing force. For this analysis, we will break parts of the lower body down into concentric and eccentric motions and the muscles that aid them. We'll start with the right hip. In the concentric phase, which is the hip continuing to drive through the ball until the leg reaches its peak, the hip is extending, which is aided by the gluteus maximus and hamstrings. In its eccentric phase, which is the descending of the leg back to the ground, the hip begins to flex back into neutral using the quadriceps, iliacus, psoas, iliopsoas, and pectineus muscles. The right knee will remain in extension during both the concentric and eccentric phases of this action and will be aided by the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, lateralis, and intermedius muscles. Both ankles will remain plantar flexed in the concentric phase of this action but will dorsiflex back into neutral as they prepare to land on the ground. The tibialis anterior will cause the dorsiflexion. Moving on to the left leg, you'll notice that the hip and knee will remain in extension during the concentric phase and then transition to a slight flexion as the leg prepares to absorb the impact of the landing. The quadriceps, iliacus, psoas, iliopsoas, and pectineus will be utilized by the hip in the concentric phase, and the hamstrings and gluteus maximus will be utilized in the eccentric phase, while the left knee will utilize the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus muscles in the concentric phase, and the rectus femoris, vastus medialis, lateralis, and intermedius muscles in the eccentric phase. That will conclude our analytical biomechanical analysis of our friend Ruben taking a free kick. Let's take a look at some of those brilliant shots and look for the actions we just discussed as we close out.